This week on Supercars Talk, it's the final round of the eSeries, so that means some real racing isn't far away. This week sees the final of the BP Supercars All-Stars eSeries. Apparently Shane van Gisbergen's leading the championship. Scott McLaughlin's an amount of points away. I think it's somewhat close, but I'm not 100% sure on the whole. I haven't been following the points that closely. I have actually been watching the races though, which I think some people have started to drop away going by the viewing figures, but it has actually been surprisingly good. I was not expecting much at the start of it, and the racing has actually been pretty good. We have seen, a few different things. Like I was surprised the racing around the Michigan Oval was pretty good. The Charlotte I thought was really good. Some of the stuff like Bathurst was quite good to watch. I think they could have done a bit better with some of the track choices. Will be interesting. This week we have two races, just the two, one at Oran Park and one at Bathurst. Both will be a half-hour race, whatever that equates to, kind of laps and distance. Who knows? But pretty simple format compared to what we've seen over the course of this series. Would have liked to have seen them play around a bit more with formats. It has been a little bit stale, I would have thought. They've thrown in a few odd things for qualifying. Really liked those heat kind of qualifyings that they had at Michigan. But I would have like to have seen, maybe a bit more of a variation and a few more different race formats other than we had the reverse grid stuff, but that was pretty much it. It all followed a kind of similar, to what they do in normal racing where you get a compulsory pit stop and things like that. Would have been good to maybe, this was the opportunity to mix it up a fair bit. And they didn't really take that opportunity. We have a few confirmed wildcards for this race. We got Brody Kostecki, Will Brown. Both of those have, pretty good in the sim, especially Brody Kostecki. He'll ruffle a few feathers again, hopefully. It's for the series. Just before I get into that, the third confirmed wildcard is Jono Webb, which is quite an interesting one because, his reputation's taken a bit of a beating recently. It'll be interesting to see how he goes, whether he's competitive with his other, techno teammates or whether they kind of blow him away or not. That'll be interesting to see. But some of the wildcards have been quite interesting along the way. Some of them have been just an absolute waste of time. I would have been a little bit more where they did that, whatever it was, the Legends race or whatever, the All-Star race. I think it would have been interesting if we had a few of the guys like, Neil Crompton, Brad Jones and that actually in the proper racing. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But seeing some like Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, in the e-racing as wildcards, that was brilliant to see. I wish there was probably a bit more of that. It's good to see some old faces like Simona back in the field and things like that. Overall, I think the eSeries, they've done a pretty good job of it. And like the IndyCar one with iRacing, they have been good to watch. And I know it's still a game, but it's not bad considering, we haven't had any racing since the guys were in Adelaide this year. Formula 1 and IndyCar didn't even get to start. So, it's something that we've been able to talk about and been able to watch on the TV, get the sponsors out there. Maybe they could have done things a little bit better. I think given the circumstances, it's been pretty good. And it finishes this week. And then, we're only 2 weeks away before we get to see some real action on track again. One of the big stories from this week, Shane van Gisbergen has been able to come home. He went over to New Zealand at the start of this whole COVID thing and has been somewhat stuck over there since the beginning of it. I think at home with his parents, but he's been able to come home to his home now, to Queensland, back with his sim rig and that, to get, have his quarantine period and that, so that he is ready to race in the proper round. So for him, this could be a good thing for the e-racing because he gets back in his actual sim rig. He was doing a pretty good job of it though in borrowed gear over in New Zealand. We do have to ask the question though, the cat hasn't been allowed to come back with him, so if the results aren't there this week, was the cat doing the driving for him? The other big story from this week is that H and Holden have come to an agreement. Holden will not be sponsoring H for next year, so to me that means that Holden's paid a chunk of money this year to get out of the contract for next year. I've seen a lot of comments on social media and that asking what cars will they be racing next year. Well, it's pretty simple. They're going to be racing a ZB Commodore. This whole COVID thing hit and there's no chance you're going to be running a different manufacturer next year. So they'll be running a ZB Commodore. And then all the people going, oh, Holden doesn't exist and, they're not selling the ZB, so how can they race it? Well, the cars are homologated for a period of time. Currently, only the Mustang and the ZB Commodore are homologated in their, current guises. That means that you can't, unless you were to go and re-homologate an Altima or an FGX Falcon or the Volvo or the Mercedes, you can't race it in Supercars at the moment. They're fine in Super 2 because essentially they're a generation behind running, the old body kits and things. Well, they're not even running a ZB or a Mustang in Super 2 at the moment. So yeah, next year will be the ZB and the Mustang. 2021, 2022, who knows what's going to happen then, whether we see some new manufacturers, whether we see Gen 3 or whether, it just rolls over for another year. But yeah, we will see them in a ZB Commodore again next year. So that's it for this episode. We've got one more round of the eSeries to go and then that can go into the history books hopefully forever and we just have real racing from here on in. If you want to get in contact with me down there, I think supercarstalk@gmail.com, leave a comment, like and share. Apparently that's pretty good for the channels. That's what I see in all the other YouTube videos. So, if you could do that and help me out, that would be awesome. And until next time, I'll see you later.